Sometimes the most unexpected betrayals are the ones that shatter our entire reality. Picture a loving mother, a devoted wife stepping into the grand lobby of the Hyatt Regency in downtown Chicago, her pulse quickening at the thought of surprising her husband on his routine business trip. Yet instead of his welcoming embrace, she is greeted by a sight that rips her world apart. A tender kiss shared between him and a mysterious woman in a sleek black coat. In that single heart-stopping moment, everything changes. Secrets spill into the open heart's break, and as a new chapter begins, it unfolds into a storm of regret, revenge, and the ultimate fight for hope. Emma Davenport woke to the sound of her alarm clock vibrating stubbornly on the bedside table, its gentle buzzing a relentless reminder of the hectic day ahead. She blinked herself awake momentarily, disoriented by the early dawn light cutting through the thin curtains. For a moment, she simply lay there, taking in the comforting smell of fresh linen and the faint lemony tang of the cleaning spray she always used. Next to her, the bed was cold and empty. Mark had left for Chicago the previous afternoon, attending yet another financial conference as part of his ever-demanding job at Harper & Green Investments. Their 3-year-old daughter Lily stirred in the next room. Emma could hear the soft hum of a lullaby, playing from the child's nightlight, a small giraffe that projected stars onto the ceiling. She swung her legs off the bed and headed to Lily's room, her mind already flipping through the day's tasks. She planned to surprise Mark in Chicago that evening. Over the last few months, an uneasy feeling had gnawed at her, a suspicion she kept pushing aside. While Mark claimed to be overwhelmed with work, she wanted to see for herself if everything was really as he said. She scooped Lily into her arms, inhaling the sweet baby shampoo in her daughter's hair. A wave of resolve swept over her. For years, she had trusted Mark blindly. He was the calm, steady presence in her life, a man who made time for bedtime stories and neighborhood barbecues even as he rose through the ranks of his firm. Yet something had changed. It was in the way he avoided her eyes at the dinner table, in the vague excuses he made after late-night phone calls. Emma needed clarity, and she was determined to get it. Despite her growing worries, Emma couldn't forget the man who once charmed her with fresh daisies on their first date. In the early days, Mark was her everything. They had met by chance at an art gallery in downtown Seattle, introduced by mutual acquaintances. Emma had been immediately drawn to his warm laugh and quiet confidence. They shared a passion for exploring museums, volunteering at local charities, and dreaming of a future filled with travel love and children. But as Mark climbed higher in his career, work trips became the norm. It started slowly, a day trip to Los Angeles, a 2-night conference in Boston. Emma had brushed off any concerns back then, reminding herself that she had married a man with ambition. His success was their success. But with each promotion, Mark's job demands soared. His phone was forever buzzing with new messages. His eyes flickered with tension whenever she asked questions. A month ago, Emma found a receipt in Mark's coat pocket from the St. Regis Hotel in Chicago. It was for a lavish dinner for 2. Mark had told her it was merely a networking meal with a prospective client named Mr. Townsend. Yet the scrawled signature on the receipt wasn't Mark's handwriting. Alarm bells rang in Emma's mind, but she was too afraid to push him, afraid of what she might learn. In the back of her mind, she clung to a fragile hope that there was an innocent explanation. That morning, as she kissed Lily goodbye and entrusted her to the care of her mother, Linda Pierce, Emma's nerves twisted in her stomach. She told herself she was just going to surprise Mark, to remind him that his family was right here, waiting and loving him. She prayed that her doubts were unfounded, and that by nightfall they would be laughing about her silly suspicions. She had no idea that what she would witness in a few short hours would change everything. The drive from their suburban home in Lake Forest to Chicago was typically just over an hour, but traffic stretched it to nearly 2. Emma found herself tapping her fingers anxiously on the steering wheel, eyes flicking to the clock every few minutes. She had planned her arrival to coincide with Mark's break between conference sessions. The plan was simple: appear in the hotel lobby around 7 in the evening. Text him to meet her by the grand staircase and greet him with a heartfelt kiss. She hoped the spontaneity would reignite the spark that had dwindled over the past year. As she navigated the bustling city streets, Emma remembered how much she used to love Chicago. She had attended college here years ago and always found an unmatched energy in its towering skyline. Now the once exciting metropolis felt daunting, its tall buildings pressing in on her. She turned onto Michigan Avenue, weaving through throngs of pedestrians. With every mile, her heart pounded faster. She parked in an underground garage and made her way to the Hyatt Regency, an enormous structure that soared above the city. Emma swiped a bit of lipstick across her lips, checked her reflection in the mirrored panels near the revolving doors, and took a calming breath. She tried not to let her anxious thoughts overshadow her intentions. If she was going to face Mark, it had to be with confidence. Clutching her purse, she stepped into the grand lobby, with its marble floors and lofty ceilings. She could almost imagine Mark's surprised grin, the way he'd lift her up in a twirl. But as she scanned the opulent space, she didn't see him at the lounge or by the registration desk. Instead, she saw something else, something that made her freeze in her tracks. There near the bar area, under soft golden lights, sat Mark. He wasn't alone. A woman with dark, cascading hair leaned close, her hand resting intimately on his arm. Emma's brain struggled to process what she was seeing. For a second, she prayed it was some misunderstanding. Perhaps this was a colleague, and they were discussing business details. But then Mark turned to the woman, and their lips met in a slow, unmistakably romantic kiss. Emma felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Numbness washed over her entire body. Her feet rooted to the spot, and it was as if the rest of the world faded away, leaving only the horrifying sight of her husband kissing a stranger. It was surreal, like a bad dream from which she couldn't wake. She stood there not more than 20 feet away, unnoticed by Mark. The woman, elegantly dressed in a fitted black coat, pulled back and gazed adoringly at him. Emma recognized that look. It was the look of someone deeply involved. She realized with acute clarity that this wasn't just a casual fling. This was something that had been going on long enough for them to appear entirely at ease in public. Tears pricked the back of her eyes, but fury overcame her shock. How dare he do this here so blatantly? She wanted to stride across the lobby, slap him, make a scene. 1,000 impulses warred in her mind: heartbreak, anger, confusion, and the fragile remains of her dignity. Ultimately, she took a shaking breath and backed away, retreating into the shadows of the expansive corridor, leaving Mark and his mistress, who for now remained oblivious to Emma's presence. Emma didn't remember how she got from the hotel to the street. One moment, she was inside that marble lobby, watching Mark betray her. The next, she was stumbling onto the sidewalk, swallowing lungfuls of the frigid Chicago air. Her phone buzzed in her purse, but she couldn't bring herself to look at it. If it was Mark, she didn't want to talk to him. If it was anyone else, she couldn't summon the strength to explain what she'd just witnessed. For what felt like hours, she wandered aimlessly along the streets, tears streaming down her cheeks. She replayed the scene in her head over and over, each iteration stabbing deeper than the last. Glimpses of their life together flashed before her eyes. Mark's smile on their wedding day, the time he wept with joy when Lily was born, the nights he would scoop her into his arms and promise her the world. How could that same man now be kissing another woman without remorse? Eventually, she found herself standing near a small park, the lights from a nearby cafe illuminating the tears on her face. She sank onto a bench and let her emotions course through her. Anger flared white-hot, mingling with heartbreak. She wanted answers, yet the thought of confronting Mark right now was too much to bear. Her phone buzzed again. Summoning her nerve, she pulled it out to see a text from her mother Linda, who asked, "How's the surprise going? Is Mark excited?" Lily's asking for her daddy. Emma's gut twisted as she read the words. How could she ever explain this to Lily? She typed a quick, shaky reply. "Not great. I'll be home soon." Then she hailed a taxi back to her car, her mind already plotting her next move. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She paced the living room, waiting for Mark to return from Chicago. She had no intention of revealing she had gone there to see him. Let him try to lie his way out. First, she wanted to see how deep his betrayal would go. Around midnight, Mark finally strode into the house with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, and the faint smell of hotel soap clinging to his skin. "Hey, honey," he greeted, sounding casual, almost loving, as though nothing was amiss. "Conference ran late. You didn't have to wait up." Emma forced a tight smile. "I wanted to see you," she replied coolly. In truth, she was marveling at his ability to pretend. Her heart hammered against her ribcage, and she felt the urge to scream at him to demand he tell her the truth. But she waited, letting the tension build between them. Mark went to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, and offered Emma one as well. As he turned around, she fixed him with a steady gaze. "Did you have dinner with Mr. Townsend again?" she asked, voice trembling lightly. He hesitated, eyes flicking away for the briefest moment before returning to hers. "Yeah," he lied smoothly. It was all business, just like before. Emma's anger flared at the blatant untruth. She clenched her fists at her sides, her nails digging into her palms. She could feel her composure crumbling. Suddenly she snapped. "Stop lying to me, Mark. I saw you." His glass of water slipped from his fingers, shattering on the tile floor. For a moment, neither of them moved. The confession hung in the air, heavier than the tension that preceded it. "Saw me," he whispered, face draining of color. Emma gulped a shaky breath, eyes brimming with tears. "I was at the Hyatt tonight. I saw you with her." She spat the final word with venom, each syllable echoing with betrayal. Mark's mind whirred as he scrambled to regain control of the situation. Emma watched his expressions shift from shock to denial, then to something like desperation. He opened his mouth, closed it again, then finally managed. "It's not what you think." Emma laughed a harsh, broken sound. "Oh, really? Because it looked like you and that woman were pretty cozy," she said, crossing her arms over her chest. "Is she your mistress?" Mark raked a hand through his hair. She's Veronica Graham," he admitted, voice low. "She's a colleague from the firm. We've been seeing each other." Emma's stomach lurched, and she turned away, unable to look at him. Of all the words she expected to hear, his direct admission of guilt was both validating and soul-crushing. Why, she asked, her voice trembling with a mix of rage and hurt. Why would you do this to us?" He took a faltering step forward, only to stop when he saw her recoil. "It just happened." Mark tried, his voice shaking. "I've been under a lot of stress. Veronica understands my work. She's there late at night, pulling the same hours, dealing with the same pressures." "Don't!" Emma hissed, tears streaking her face. "Don't you dare reduce this to stress and late nights. We have a child, Mark. We had a life." He wiped a hand across his face. "I never stopped loving you," he insisted. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake." "That's a convenient word," she spat, "and one that doesn't mean much now. You think you can just come back, say it was a mistake, and everything is fine." She turned away again, her voice dropping to a pained whisper. "I trusted you." Mark tried to speak, but she cut him off with a trembling hand. "It's too late for apologies. You made your choice." With that, she fled to their bedroom, leaving him alone in the kitchen, shards of broken glass and cold water pooling around his feet, a fitting metaphor for the ruin of their marriage. Emma had always believed she could handle anything if she and Mark faced it together. But that night, as she curled into a tight ball on their bed, she realized she was on her own. The magnitude of his betrayal crushed her. The man she thought she knew inside and out had been leading a double life. How could she ever trust him again? Throughout the night, Emma wrestled with her thoughts. She heard Mark downstairs making phone calls, likely to Veronica. She wondered if he was telling her that Emma knew. The idea of them discussing her pain so casually left her furious and humiliated. She knew she couldn't stay in that house, playing the role of dutiful wife while Mark sorted out his affair. When Lily's soft cries broke the silence at dawn, Emma rose mechanically. She realized with sudden clarity what she had to do. She needed to leave. Emma's first priority was her daughter, protecting her from the fallout of this nightmare. As Lily's innocent eyes opened, Emma forced a reassuring smile onto her face, but inside her heart was in shreds. Once Lily was fed and dressed, Emma scribbled a short note for Mark. "I'm taking Lily away for a while. Don't follow us. We need space." She set the note on the kitchen counter, next to the shards of broken glass that still lay there from the night before Mark hadn't even bothered to clean them up. It was symbolic, she realized, of how little he cared for order, now that his secret was out. Emma packed a suitcase, taking only essentials. She called her mother, but Linda didn't pick up. She didn't leave a voicemail. She wanted to make her move before Mark woke up. Give herself a head start. Within half an hour, Emma had Lily strapped into the back seat of the car and was pulling away from the life she had known. She drove eastward, not entirely sure where she was going. Emma had distant relatives in Michigan, an aunt named Eleanor, who'd moved to a lakeside property near Traverse City. It was a place Emma had visited a few times in childhood. Aunt Eleanor and Emma's mother had never been close, but Emma remembered her aunt as a kind, if somewhat reserved woman. With no other plan in mind, Emma dialed the number she found in an old address book tucked away in the glove compartment. To her relief, Eleanor picked up on the second ring, after a hasty explanation that left out most details. Emma asked if she and Lily could stay for a while. "We just need to get away," she confessed in a trembling voice. Despite years of little contact, Eleanor hesitated only for a moment before agreeing. The promise of a temporary haven calmed Emma's racing heart. She pressed down on the accelerator, determined to put as much distance as possible between them and Mark. Lily dozed in the back seat, hugging her little stuffed elephant. Every now and then Emma glanced in the rear-view mirror, tears stinging her eyes. She felt guilty uprooting Lily's life, but she believed she was protecting her daughter from the emotional storm. For now, at least they would be safe in a remote lakeside cottage, away from the chaos Mark's actions had unleashed. As the cityscape gave way to open highway, and then rolling farmland, Emma's thoughts drifted to what would happen next. She had no clear plan. The heartbreak was too fresh to think about lawyers or custody battles. But one thing was sure: she would not let Mark's betrayal define her or harm Lily. If he wanted to keep playing the role of an unfaithful husband, he would do it alone. Mark awoke in an empty house. The silence, usually comforting after a long trip, felt suffocating. He rubbed his eyes and glanced at his phone. No new messages from Emma. Confusion prickled at his mind. Normally Lily would be chattering in the living room, or Emma would have breakfast ready. He rolled out of bed, the events of the previous night seeping back into his consciousness like a poison. He found Emma's note on the kitchen counter. His stomach lurched as he read it. "I'm taking Lily away for a while. Don't follow us. We need space." Shock turned to panic. She was gone, and she had taken Lily. Mark ran a hand through his hair, guilt and fear swirling together. He reached for his phone, dialing Emma's number, but it went straight to voicemail. He tried Linda's number, hoping her mother would have some information, but Linda sounded just as alarmed when Mark mentioned Emma's disappearance. "What do you mean she's gone?" Linda demanded. "She left Lily with me yesterday morning. Now you're saying she took Lily away." When Mark's stunned silence answered her question well enough, and Linda hung up in anger, promising to find her daughter, Mark paced the house like a trapped animal, scanning for any sign of where Emma might have gone. He scoured her desk drawers, the bedroom closet, even the attic. There was no clue. All he found were the heart-breakingly empty spaces where Emma's clothes had been. The realization that she had planned this departure, packed Lily's things, wrote the note, and left without looking back, crushed him. He knew he had done this. He was the one who'd introduced deceit into their marriage. And now, facing the consequences, the depth of his regret began to sink in. But regret wouldn't bring Emma back. If he wanted to salvage anything, he would have to take drastic steps to win back his family's trust, assuming Emma would even give him the chance. Days stretched into a week, and still Emma did not return. Mark reached out to everyone he could think of: mutual friends, acquaintances, even distant relatives, but no one knew where Emma and Lily might be. In a moment of desperation, Mark confided in his best friend and co-worker, James Overton. James's advice was blunt. "You need a lawyer." Reluctantly, Mark scheduled an appointment with Rebecca Slater, a top family law attorney in Chicago. Sitting in her sleek office with floor-to-ceiling windows, Mark felt exposed and vulnerable. Rebecca studied him from behind her large mahogany desk, her expression unreadable. "So your wife left," she stated, scanning over the initial paperwork he had filled out, "and she took your child with her. Have you received any official communication regarding a divorce or custody arrangement?" Mark shook his head. "No. She left a note. That's it." "I've tried calling, texting, no response." Rebecca folded her hands. "Did you give her cause?" Mark's face burned. He cleared his throat. I had an affair." She found out. Rebecca nodded her gaze, never wavering. Infidelity can certainly precipitate drastic actions. "Look, we can file a petition for a formal custody arrangement, but if she hasn't filed for divorce yet, it's a bit tricky. Are you sure you want to go down that path immediately? Sometimes it escalates things beyond repair." Mark hesitated, tears pricking the corners of his eyes. All he truly wanted was to fix things with Emma, to apologize, to beg her forgiveness. But Emma was gone, and he had no idea how to reach her. "I just want to see my daughter," he whispered. "I'll do whatever it takes." Rebecca's face softened slightly. "Let's hold off on immediate legal action. I'll do some private searching, see if we can find out where she might be staying. Once we know that, you can decide how to proceed. In the meantime, gather financial statements, property details, everything." Mark left her office feeling more lost than ever. He had set a ruinous ball in motion by kissing Veronica that night in the hotel lobby, by allowing their affair to blossom in the first place. Now, with Emma and Lily vanished, he realized the gaping void where his family used to be. For the first time, the possibility of never seeing them again crushed him beyond measure. Emma found a quiet solace in Aunt Eleanor's lakeside home. The weather was beginning to warm, melting the last patches of snow around the cabin's perimeter. Lily, oblivious to the drama unfolding, loved splashing at the shoreline with her tiny boots. She giggled when the cold water touched her toes and made a game of collecting shiny pebbles. Aunt Eleanor was an enigma. She did not pry for details about Emma's sudden arrival. Instead, she offered the comforts of home warm meals, a cozy bedroom, and an ample supply of patient understanding. Emma was grateful for the sanctuary. When she couldn't sleep at night, she'd wander down to the dock, staring out at the moonlit lake. The stillness of the water mirrored her new sense of limbo, not quite sure where she was headed, but certain she couldn't go back to the life she left. One evening, Aunt Eleanor joined Emma on the dock, handing her a steaming mug of tea. They stood in silence for a while, the night breeze rippling across the lake's surface. Finally, Eleanor spoke in her measured, quiet voice. "I don't need to know everything that happened, dear, but I can see the pain in your eyes." Emma nodded, tears brimming. "He cheated," she said. Simply. "I saw him, there's no doubt." Aunt Eleanor inhaled slowly. "I'm so sorry," she replied, setting a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "I'd never presume to tell you what to do, but know that if you need time, or if you need someone to lean on, I'm here." Emma exhaled shakily. "I just can't believe he'd throw away our family like that. Now I'm afraid of the future. Afraid he'll try to take Lily, or that I'll never be able to stand on my own 2 feet again." Eleanor's gaze was firm, yet kind. "Emma, you're stronger than you think. Start with today. Focus on what you need right now to keep yourself and Lily safe and stable." Over the following weeks, Emma took on small tasks to help Eleanor around the property. She found a moment of peace in the rhythm of raking leaves and planting new flowers. Lily thrived on the freedom chasing after butterflies and squealing with delight whenever a duck paddled near the shore. The constant ache of betrayal was still there, but day by day, Emma felt a small kernel of strength grow within her. While Emma and Lily found an uneasy peace in Michigan, Mark's mistress Veronica, Graham, was facing her own challenges. In the aftermath of Emma's disappearance, Mark had distanced himself from Veronica, plagued by guilt and worry. Their once passionate affair, fueled by late-night strategy sessions and stolen kisses in the office corridor, had begun to sour under the weight of real-life consequences. Veronica was no stranger to ambition. She thrived in the fast-paced environment of Harper & Green Investments. But rumors circulated quickly in corporate hallways. Whispers of the married Mark Davenport's affair reached many ears, and it didn't take long for people to link it to Veronica. The sly looks and hushed judgments weighed on her every time she walked into the office. She confronted Mark about his sudden coldness one evening when he agreed to meet her at a discreet cafe near their workplace. "I feel like you're punishing me for something." "We both chose," Veronica said. frustration evident in her voice. Mark rubbed his forehead. He looked tired, older somehow. "I'm not punishing you," he insisted. I'm worried about Emma and Lily. She's gone, Veronica. I have no clue where she is. And it's my fault." Veronica reached out to take his hand, but Mark pulled away. The rejection stung. "You can't blame yourself entirely," she tried. "We both knew what we were doing. Emma finding out, well, that was never going to be clean or easy." Mark stared into his coffee cup. "That doesn't help," he said, voice hollow. "I need to make this right, but I don't even know how. Everything is a mess." Realizing the rift that had formed, Veronica felt resentment rise within her. She had risked her reputation and emotional well-being for a man who now seemed bent on retreating into his guilt. Still, she clung to the hope that she and Mark could weather the storm. After all, their bond went beyond mere lust, or so she believed. Frustrated by Rebecca Slater's slow progress and desperate for answers, Mark hired a private investigator named Jason Rudd. Jason came highly recommended by James Overton, who had once used him for a sensitive corporate matter. Though Mark felt uneasy about spying on his own wife, he rationalized that he had no other choice if he wanted to see Lily again. Jason was a middle-aged man with a calm demeanor and penetrating eyes. He listened intently as Mark recounted the night Emma left the note and the total lack of communication since. "She's not using her credit cards or her phone. At least I can't trace anything," Mark explained anxiously. Jason nodded. "She's being cautious. Likely she's using cash or a secondary bank account you're not aware of." He tapped a pen against his notepad. "Any family she might rely on. Friends outside your circle." Mark thought about Emma's mother, but Linda didn't seem to know anything. Then he remembered Emma's father had passed away years ago. She has an aunt, I think, on her mother's side. Eleanor something. They weren't very close. Jason jotted down the name. Eleanor. "That's a start." He handed Mark a stack of forms. "Sign these. I'll check phone records, any property ownership under that name. It might take a while, but we'll find them." As Mark complied, his heart pounded with conflicting emotions. Hiring a PI felt like a violation of Emma's privacy, but the alternative, doing nothing, left him paralyzed. The memory of her tear-streaked face the night she confronted him sliced through his guilt. He told himself he was doing this for Lily's sake, to be a father again, to fix what he'd broken. A small part of him feared what he'd say if he actually found Emma. Could they repair the marriage? Would she ever forgive him? Each question led to more uncertainty. Yet, Mark pushed forward, fueled by desperation. Weeks passed in Michigan. Emma's life fell into a quiet, routine breakfast with Aunt Eleanor, and Lily walks by the lake, occasional trips to the small town for groceries. She had saved enough money to sustain them for a while, and Aunt Eleanor refused any rent payments, insisting Emma's presence was enough. Still, Emma knew she couldn't hide forever. She spent her nights reading about divorce laws, spousal support, and child custody. The words swam before her tired eyes, overwhelming her with legal jargon. She jotted questions in a notebook, hoping to someday get real legal advice. One afternoon, Emma received a phone call on the new prepaid cell phone she had purchased under a false name. To her surprise, it was Linda Pierce, her mother. Emma froze, torn between her desire to talk to the woman who raised her and her fear that Mark might be tracking their communication. "Mum," Emma whispered, stepping out onto the cabin's porch. "Oh, thank God," Linda exclaimed, relief evident in her voice. "Emma, are you all right? Mark told me you left, but he doesn't know where you are." Emma hesitated, tears springing to her eyes. She missed her mother desperately, but she also feared that Linda might share her location with Mark. "We're safe," she managed. "I can't tell you where, though." "Not yet." Linda sniffled. "I won't force you, but please know I'm worried." "Lily is okay." "She's fine, Mum. She's healthy and happy." Emma looked toward the lake where Lily was chasing after a butterfly. He betrayed me, Mum. I can't go back. Not now." "I understand," Linda replied. "I don't know what to think of Mark anymore. He seems genuinely torn up. But this is your decision, dear. Just promise me you'll stay in touch. I won't tell him anything you don't want me to." Emma allowed herself a tiny measure of comfort. "Thank you, Mum. I'll call again soon." As the call ended, Emma felt a strange combination of relief and guilt. She had reconnected with her mother, but she still felt guilty for cutting off Mark entirely. Yet every time she pictured him with that other woman, the heartbreak flared anew. She reminded herself she was protecting Lily, and she had no obligation to rush back into Mark's arms. Back in Chicago, Jason Rudd's investigation bore fruit. He discovered that a certain Eleanor Pierce owned a modest lakeside property near Traverse City, Michigan. Public records indicated a recent utility spike suggesting new occupants. Jason presented his findings to Mark in a manila envelope one morning at a discreet coffee shop. "This is likely where your wife is staying," Jason said matter-of-factly. "Based on what I've gathered, she's been there for at least a few weeks." Mark's hands trembled as he flipped through the pages. A property deed with Eleanor Pierce's name, some bank transactions for groceries, a few photographs of Emma's car, parked discreetly off the main road. Guilt and hope twisted together in his chest. She was within driving distance, alive and well with Lily. "What do I do now?" Mark asked quietly. Jason shrugged. "That's your call. Legally, you can attempt to force her to return, or at least negotiate custody. But if you truly want to reconcile, showing up with a court order might not be the best approach." Mark swallowed hard, thinking of Emma's tearful face. "I just want to see my daughter," he repeated. "I want Emma to know how sorry I am." Jason gave him a curt nod. "Then go. But I'd advise you do it gently." Fueled by this revelation, Mark set out that same afternoon. The drive seemed endless, his thoughts a maelstrom. Would Emma slam the door in his face? Would she let Lily see him? Did he even deserve forgiveness? Each mile brought him closer to answers he might not be ready to hear. Late evening shadows stretched across the gravel road as Mark pulled up to the address Jason had provided. The cottage stood near the water's edge, lights glowing softly inside. Mark parked a short distance away, heart pounding in his ears. He approached the front porch, his mouth dry as sand. His footsteps sounded unnaturally loud on the wooden steps. Before he could knock, the door swung open, revealing Aunt Eleanor. She regarded him calmly, her lips a thin line of disapproval. "Mark," she said, voice cool. "I knew you'd come eventually." He nodded, swallowing hard. "May I see Emma?" Eleanor stepped aside, but didn't invite him in. "I'll get her. Wait here." Moments later, Emma appeared in the doorway. Her face paled at the sight of him, and she instinctively turned to check on Lily, who was napping in another room. Closing the door behind her, she joined him on the porch, crossing her arms protectively over her chest. "How did you find us?" she demanded, voice trembling with anger. Mark clenched and unclenched his fists. "I had to. I hired a PI." "Emma, I'm sorry." "Sorry," she repeated bitterly. "You come here with a private investigator's evidence spying on me and say you're sorry." He blinked back tears. I couldn't just do nothing. Emma, please. I had to see Lily. I'm not here to take her away. I want to see my daughter. And I want to talk. Can we please talk? Emma stared at him, her emotions warring across her face. She glanced back at the cottage where Aunt Eleanor hovered in the doorway. Finally, she exhaled. Fine. But Lily is asleep, and I don't want you waking her. We'll talk on the dock. Mark nodded, following her across the small yard to the lakeside dock. The moonlight reflected off the water, casting an ethereal glow over the surface. They stopped at the edge, the gentle sound of lapping waves filling the tension between them. They stood in silence for a moment, before Mark spoke, his voice cracking. I've been going crazy not knowing where you were, if you were safe. Emma's jaw tightened. I'm safe enough, she replied, her gaze fixed on the dark water. And Lily is fine too. No thanks to you. Mark swallowed the lump in his throat. I deserve that. Emma, I don't know if it helps, but I ended things with Veronica. I told her it's over. I'm willing to quit my job if that's what it takes to show you I'm serious about our marriage. Emma turned to look at him, tears glistening in her eyes. Our marriage? She echoed. You broke our marriage the moment you slept with her. Do you have any idea how humiliating it was for me to see you two together in that lobby? His own eyes grew misty. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I was an idiot. I got caught up in the pressures of work, the excitement there's no excuse. I just want a chance to make it right. Emma laughed bitterly, tears spilling over. Make it right. How, Mark? You expect me to pretend this never happened, to forget the image of you kissing her? Her voice shook with anger. You lied to me. You lied about business trips, about dinners with Mr. Townsend. You chose her over us. I never chose her over you. Mark insisted, his words tumbling out. I was confused. Emma raised a trembling hand, stopping him. That's the thing, Mark. You did choose her every time you went to her hotel room or stayed late at the office for those so-called meetings. Now it's too late to say it was a mistake. The damage is done. Mark's breath hitched. Do you hate? Emma's tears fell in earnest. I hate what you've done. I hate that I have to look at Lily and know you betrayed us. She shook her head. But I'm also hurt, and part of me still loves you. I hate that the most. A choking sob escaped Mark's lips. He reached out to her, but she stepped back. They stood there raw and wounded under the moonlight, an unbridgeable chasm between them. Their conversation stretched into the late hours. Emma refused to let Mark inside the cottage, but she eventually relented to his request to see Lily in the morning. They sat under the starlight, discussing logistics, how Mark might visit without driving Emma away for good, how to handle finances in the interim. When Emma finally slipped back into the cottage, Mark slept fitfully in his car. His mind reeled from the confrontation, from Emma's tearful rage, from the faint glimmer of hope that she had not declared outright that their marriage was over. At dawn, Lily's voice roused Emma from sleep. The child was excited to see the ducks on the lake, babbling in her toddler speak. Emma's heart clenched, knowing Mark was waiting just outside. She made a quick decision and led Lily to the porch. There Mark stood with dark circles under his eyes and a weary smile. "Hi, sweetheart," he said softly, crouching down to Lily's eye level. The child looked unsure, hugging Emma's leg. For a moment, heartbreak flickered across Mark's face. He reached out gently, and Lily hesitated before stepping forward. "Daddy missed you," he whispered, pulling her into a delicate hug. Emma watched, tears brimming again. She reminded herself that Lily deserved a father, even if he was flawed. That tiny moment of reunion was enough to tear at Emma's carefully constructed wall. Part of her wanted to lash out and push him away. Another part wanted to bury her face in his chest to recall the warmth of the man she had loved. They spent a tense half-hour together, Mark helping Lily feed the ducks. Emma standing off to the side, arms folded protectively. When Lily asked if Daddy was coming home, Emma felt the sting of tears once again. She shook her head silently, unable to speak. Mark glanced at her, his eyes filled with regret. "Let's take this one step at a time," he murmured, more to Emma than to Lily. She gave him a curt nod, swallowing the pain, and hoping, for Lily's sake, that they could find a way to coexist, whatever that might look like. Over the following days, Mark rented a small cabin in the same area, a few miles down the lake. Emma allowed him carefully supervised visits with Lily, ensuring the child didn't suffer the sting of confusion or broken promises. It was an uneasy truce. Emma refused to discuss a permanent reconciliation. Her wounds were still too fresh. But she also didn't push for an immediate divorce, torn between her lingering love for Mark and her deep-seated anger. Aunt Eleanor silently observed the delicate dance between them, offering Emma private words of support, but never overstepping. She saw the torment in Emma's eyes and recognized the complexity of heartbreak, betrayal, and love colliding. Occasionally, Emma and Mark found themselves talking about mundane things, Lily's bedtime routines, her favorite songs, or what she ate for lunch. These trivial exchanges felt odd, yet somehow comforting. They were a reminder of the normalcy they once shared. Meanwhile, Mark's guilt weighed heavily. He kept his distance, respecting Emma's boundary. Each time he saw Lily's face light up at his arrival, he felt a dual pang of joy and despair. Would he ever be fully forgiven? Or was he doomed to this half-life, desperately clinging to fatherhood, while Emma rebuilt her own world without him? A month into this arrangement, Veronica made an unannounced appearance. She had tracked Mark's sudden absence from work, discovered his leads about Emma's location, and decided to confront him. Her arrival sent shockwaves through the fragile peace Emma and Mark had established. Veronica showed up at Mark's rented cabin, her eyes blazing with anger and betrayal. "You haven't returned my calls or texts," she spat. "I had to find you on my own. So this is where you ran off to playing house with your wife again?" Mark stiffened. "It's not like that," he tried to explain. "Veronica, I told you it's over. Emma and Lily are my family. I'm trying to fix things." Veronica let out a scornful laugh. "Fix things? You think you can just walk away from me, from everything we shared?" She gestured around. "Did you expect me to just vanish so you could rebuild your perfect suburban life?" Mark felt a surge of irritation mixed with shame. "We made a mistake," he said through gritted teeth. "I'm owning up to it now. There's nothing more to say." Unfortunately, Emma had arrived at that exact moment, intending to drop Lily off for a short visit. She froze at the sight of Veronica, her heart pounding with renewed fury. The scene was all too much, a vicious reminder of the betrayal that had driven her here in the first place. Veronica turned at the sound of Emma's footsteps, her stare turning icy. "So this is the woman you ran away to," she said, her tone dripping with contempt. "Isn't it ironic? Emma, you ran, he chased you, and now the mistress is left behind." Before Emma could respond, Mark stepped forward. "Veronica, that's enough. This is between me and Emma." But Emma couldn't hold back her outrage. She marched up to Veronica, voice trembling. "Don't you dare twist this. You tore our marriage apart, and now you have the nerve to come here." Veronica's eyes flashed. "Your marriage was already in trouble, sweetheart. That's why Mark was with me in the first place." Emma's hand flew before she could stop herself, slapping Veronica hard across the face. Veronica staggered back, eyes wide with shock. Lily, who was strapped into a car seat behind Emma, began to cry at the commotion. Mark rushed to intervene. Tears burned in Emma's eyes. She realized how easily the veneer of civility had shattered. With a shaking breath, she turned to Mark. "This is exactly why I left," she said through gritted teeth. "There's no peace with you. It's all lies and chaos." And in that moment, Emma vowed she would finalize her decision. It was time to end this toxic circle and protect herself and her child once and for all. That evening, Emma called a divorce attorney in Traverse City named Michael Sanders, recommended by a local acquaintance. She explained her situation, the betrayal, her temporary residence, and her desire to protect Lily. Michael listened patiently, then laid out her options. "Given your circumstances, we can file here in Michigan, provided you establish residency," he explained. "But typically, jurisdiction could be contested by your husband if he files in Illinois. We'll need to act carefully to ensure your rights and Lily's interests are protected." Emma nodded, her hands trembling around the phone. She felt a strange clarity settle over her, like a burden lifting off her shoulders. She would no longer hide. She would fight for her daughter's stability and for her own future. The next day, she met Michael in person. His office was modest but tidy, and Emma found his demeanor reassuring. She handed him a stack of notes and documents she had painstakingly compiled, evidence of Mark's infidelity financial records, Lily's birth certificate. "I have to do this," she said, voice wavering. "I can't live in this in-between anymore." Michael patted her hand. "You're making a brave choice. We'll file the necessary paperwork. Be prepared your husband may contest it, and the process might get messy. But I'll guide you every step of the way." Emma exhaled. "Thank you," she whispered, tears hovering in her eyes. I want peace. For Lily and for myself." When Mark received the divorce papers by courier at his rented cabin, a wave of nausea nearly knocked him off balance. Even though he suspected this outcome, seeing it in black and white was a shock. The words hammered home the finality of what was happening. He hurried to Emma's cottage, ignoring the voice in his head that told him she might slam the door in his face. Aunt Eleanor answered her disapproval as evident as ever, but she allowed him to step inside when he begged for a moment of Emma's time. In the living room, Emma stood with her hands folded, her expression resigned. "You got the papers," she said calmly. Mark lifted the manila envelope. "Is this really what you want?" Emma swallowed, her eyes shimmering with tears she refused to shed. "I don't see it any other way. You cheated on me, Mark, and then you brought all that chaos here. I can't expose Lily to that kind of turmoil. She deserves better." He sank onto the sofa, shaking his head. "I know I messed up. I don't expect you to forgive me easily. But can't we try counseling or a trial separation? Do we have to go straight to divorce?" Emma softened for a second, her gaze drifting to the hallway where Lily was playing. "I wish I could say yes," she murmured. "But we tried coexisting. Look what happened. Veronica showed up and it all fell apart again. I can't keep living like this, Mark. My heart is broken. I need to move on." Mark felt tears sting his eyes. "What about custody?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I don't want to lose Lily." Emma's jaw tightened. We'll figure out an arrangement. She needs her father, but not if it means I'm constantly in agony." Mark nodded, tears slipping down his face. "I understand." He stood clutching the divorce papers as though they weighed 1,000 pounds. Before leaving, he managed a broken whisper. "I'm sorry, Emma. I love you. I always will." She didn't respond as he walked out the door. Only after he left did Emma allow herself the luxury of sinking to the floor, sobbing quietly, while Aunt Eleanor gently stroked her hair. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal filings, mediation sessions, and tense negotiations. Emma insisted on primary custody of Lily, with Mark allowed scheduled visitation. Despite his initial resistance, Mark eventually agreed. He realized that forcing a bitter custody battle would only hurt Lily, and he truly wanted the best for his daughter. Veronica, feeling the sting of rejection and the tarnish to her professional reputation, distanced herself from Mark and eventually left Harper & Green Investments to start over elsewhere. The last Mark heard, she had moved to New York, chasing another career opportunity, leaving Chicago and her entanglement with Mark behind. As the legalities of divorce progressed, Emma found unexpected support in her mother. Linda visited the lakeside cottage, bonding with Lily and offering Emma a shoulder to cry on. Slowly, Emma felt the suffocating pain, ease replaced by a cautious hope for the future. She began exploring freelance writing opportunities online, using her background in communications to earn an income. Mark, too, had to rebuild. He resigned from Harper & Green Investments after the scandal and took a lower-profile position at a smaller firm in the same industry. He attended therapy, trying to unravel the emotional blind spots that had led him astray. Though heartbreak lingered, he found solace in knowing he could still be part of Lily's life, visiting her on weekends and holidays according to the arrangement with Emma. Eventually, the divorce was finalized. The day Emma received the final decree, she stood by the lake once more, the wind ruffling her hair. A sense of bittersweet closure settled over her. She had loved Mark deeply, and part of her always would, but she understood now that love alone could not fix everything. Lily toddled up to her, holding a shiny pebble in her small hand. "For you, Mummy," she said, her eyes bright. Emma knelt down, taking the pebble and pulling Lily into a gentle hug. "Thank you, sweetheart," she whispered. "It's beautiful." In the distance, Aunt Eleanor watched with a soft smile. She remembered the frightened woman who had appeared on her doorstep all those months ago, searching for refuge. Now Emma stood taller, more assured, despite the heartbreak she had endured. That evening, Emma sat down at her laptop, beginning the process of searching for a place of her own, not too far from Aunt Eleanor's property. She wanted Lily to grow up surrounded by the serenity of nature, but she also needed to carve out an independent life. The phone rang a call from Mark. He was scheduled to see Lily that weekend. Emma's hand hovered over the phone for a moment before she answered. Their conversation was polite, cordial even. In that measured exchange, Emma recognized that while their romantic relationship might be irreparably broken, they could still strive for an amicable partnership as parents. And so life began anew for Emma Davenport, no longer a suburban wife living under the illusion of marital bliss, but a single mother forging her own path, confident in her ability to protect the tiny life in her care, and determined to heal her own wounded heart. This was the story of a shocking betrayal, a bold escape, and one mother's steadfast resolve to protect her child at all costs. Emma's world turned upside down the moment she discovered her husband in that hotel lobby. Yet she found the strength to leave and start over, even when her heart still ached with love and loss. Through family solitude and a fierce commitment to her daughter, she carved a new path for them both. If this story moved you or made you reflect on the power of a mother's love, please show your support. Like this video. If you believe in resilience, share it with anyone who needs a reminder that new beginnings are possible, and subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt, dramatic, real-life stories. Your engagement helps us bring you more incredible tales of courage, heartbreak, and ultimate redemption. Thank you for listening. He was the dashing mogul every ambitious entrepreneur wanted to emulate. She was the poised, loyal wife who had stood by him from humble beginnings. No one would have guessed that behind the gated mansion's manicured lawns, betrayal festered like poison. Until one day, in a flurry of financial sabotage, he let his mistress cut off his wife's credit cards. It was humiliating, scandalous, and only the beginning of a whirlwind that would pit powerful business alliances against each other. In a boardroom confrontation that stunned everyone, the CEO himself stepped in, but not in the way anyone expected. Buckle up. This is the story of love, greed, and revenge. Jordan Alberts was not born into luxury. He grew up in a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Milwaukee, where he learned to hustle by selling candy bars door to door at the age of 10. Over the years, Jordan's unwavering determination and charm propelled him into better circles. First at a local startup, then into his own tech company that caught the eye of an angel investor. By the time he was 35, Jordan was a self-made millionaire, a prominent figure on various entrepreneurial boards, and had connections with people like Mark Cuban, Bill Gates, and a few top executives at Google. His wife, Elizabeth Alberts née Wagner, had been with him through everything. They met in college at a small tech entrepreneur club meeting, both bright-eyed and dreaming of changing the world. Elizabeth came from a modest background, too. Her father was a retired auto mechanic, and her mother a homemaker. She'd studied communications with an emphasis on public relations, and it was through Elizabeth's network of contacts that Jordan first gained access to small local pitch events. While Jordan pitched his innovative software for automating small business tasks, Elizabeth made calls, arranged coffee meetups, and tried to capture the interest of potential backers. They married in a little chapel by Lake Michigan. It wasn't a lavish wedding, no star-studded guest list, no fancy reception at the Ritz. But to Jordan and Elizabeth, it felt perfect. A union built on genuine love, unwavering support, and a shared dream of building a life and a business empire together. Over the next decade, they grew from a modest condominium in Milwaukee to a stunning estate in Austin near Lake Travis, with a sweeping view of the water and rolling Texas hills. It was there at a philanthropic event organized by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that Jordan's name landed on the radar of top-level investors. His company's smart automation technology was recognized for its potential to transform not just small businesses, but large-scale manufacturing and logistics. Soon after, Jordan's net worth skyrocketed from a mere $5 million to well over $200 million. For a while, everything was picture perfect. The marriage was strong, their personal synergy unwavering. Elizabeth handled some philanthropic duties, organizing events, acting as a goodwill ambassador for Jordan's brand, and forging new partnerships through her PR background. Their household staff adored them, describing Elizabeth as kind, gracious, and always mindful of the people around her. But money can be a seductive force, and success can open doors to darker temptations. Jordan began attending more exclusive networking events in Beverly Hills, New York, and beyond. Elizabeth was often at his side, but there were times she couldn't attend. Perhaps she was busy finalizing the details for a charity gala, or maybe she was simply burnt out from the unrelenting schedule. It was during these times, rare at first, then increasingly common, that Jordan got close to someone else. Her name was Ava Monroe. She was a rising star in the world of technology law, representing high-profile clients like Tesla, Amazon, and a few top-tier cryptocurrency exchanges. She had a reputation for being ruthless in negotiations, seductive in social gatherings, and unbelievably charming behind closed doors. The rumor mill started buzzing the moment Ava was seen at Jordan's table during a private dinner after a tech summit in Las Vegas. Elizabeth wasn't there. She had chosen to stay in Austin, meeting with a team of female entrepreneurs Jordan was mentoring. A few people whispered about Jordan's visible fascination with Ava, the way he leaned in whenever she spoke, how they clinked champagne flutes with an intimacy that suggested more than just business talk. No one knew for certain how fast or how deep it went, but soon the signs became undeniable. Lavish gifts appeared on Ava's social media, including a diamond bracelet, suspiciously similar to the ones Jordan's company had once gifted important clients. Photos emerged of Jordan and Ava at high-end restaurants in Manhattan, always carefully angled to obscure Jordan's face, though keen observers could still identify him by the sliver of a recognizable watch or the faint reflection in a mirrored wall. By the time the rumors reached Elizabeth, they were no longer rumors, but near-confirmed facts. She felt her chest tighten, her world spinning out of control. This couldn't be real. Jordan had always been a loyal partner. But the evidence was too compelling to deny. She confronted him in the privacy of their Lakeview mansion. At first, Jordan denied everything. Yet denial quickly turned into a half-hearted admission once Elizabeth presented him with photographic evidence, like a skilled negotiator used to controlling deals. Jordan tried to manipulate the situation, insisting that Ava was just a business associate, someone he occasionally had dinner with. But Elizabeth saw right through it. She had always been adept at reading him. A chill settled over their once loving home. Elizabeth, determined to preserve her dignity, demanded they enter marriage counseling, or at the very least step away from high-profile events until they resolved their issues in private. Jordan nodded, providing non-committal answers. He had never liked therapy, never seen the point in discussing feelings with a stranger. He agreed to her wishes on the surface, yet beneath the facade, he continued his involvement with Ava, allowing the illicit relationship to take root. This was the calm before the storm. For soon Elizabeth's sense of betrayal would pale in comparison to the massive financial and emotional blow about to come her way. Weeks passed. Elizabeth tried to focus on her philanthropic work and personal projects, attempting to distract herself from the growing chasm between her and Jordan. When a local charity she sponsored invited her to discuss future donations, Elizabeth discovered something shocking. Her personal credit card was declined. Embarrassment washed over her in front of the unsuspecting staff. She tried another card. Sure, it must have been a glitch, but that too was declined. The staff politely suggested she call her bank, and Elizabeth excused herself with a polite smile, her hands trembling as she left the office. Elizabeth called the bank suspecting fraud or an administrative error. But the bank's representative informed her that both cards had been cancelled the previous week. Under their joint account, they were tied to Jordan's finances, and evidently Jordan had authorized the cancellation. It felt like a punch to the gut. Why on earth Would Jordan cancel her cards without her knowledge or consent? They had never had major financial disputes. Elizabeth always had access to family funds, albeit responsibly. She dialed Jordan, but the call went straight to voicemail. She sent him several frantic texts. No response. Later that evening, Jordan came home exuding an air of tired disinterest. Elizabeth confronted him the moment he walked through the door. Under the chandelier's glow, which reflected in her tear-filled eyes, Jordan brushed aside her questions with a dismissive wave. "I needed to consolidate our finances," he said, removing his blazer. "You can use the joint checking account for a while." "No big deal, no big deal." Elizabeth's frustration swelled. "You cancelled my credit cards without even telling me what's going on. Are you punishing me for something?" Jordan's eyes flicked away nervously, and that was when Elizabeth realized he was lying again. The next words that came from his mouth were not only shocking, but also laced with a cruelty she never imagined he was capable of. "Ava suggested we revisit some of my expenses. She found that you were spending frivolously. It made sense to limit credit usage." Elizabeth's heart dropped to her stomach. Ava. That woman was now meddling in their finances. As if the affair wasn't enough, Jordan had allowed this mistress to encroach into an arena that Elizabeth believed was sacred, her own household stability. "What is Ava doing reviewing my spending? Since when does your fling get to decide what is or isn't frivolous?" Elizabeth spat tears, threatening to spill. Jordan made an attempt at a calming gesture, but his words only fanned the flames. "She's helping me restructure. Her firm has great insights into corporate finances. This is about the business, Elizabeth. It's not personal." Not personal. Elizabeth recalled how intimately personal their marriage had always been. They built every aspect of their lives together, from small decisions about wallpaper colors to big entrepreneurial leaps that demanded everything from both of them. Now Jordan was shutting her out, consulting Ava instead. In a quavering voice, Elizabeth demanded, "Reinstate my cards. I am your wife. I have a right to our finances, and you know I've never been irresponsible with money." Jordan's face hardened with a new arrogance. "Not until we finalize our restructure," he said, referring to some nebulous plan Elizabeth knew little about. "I'll handle everything in the meantime." That moment, that cold exchange, was a harbinger of the bigger heartbreak to come. If Jordan was letting Ava control such details, what other aspects of their marriage was he willing to let her sabotage? As the days turned into weeks, Elizabeth discovered one more blow after another. The monthly allowance she used to cover household expenses had been slashed without explanation. The staff, including her personal assistant, was laid off. Bills began piling up, addressed to her name, but with no means to pay them aside from groveling at Jordan's feet. Friends and family started to notice. Elizabeth tried to hide her shame. She confided in her sister Caroline, who was enraged at Jordan. "This is financial abuse," Caroline insisted. "You should speak to a lawyer." Elizabeth shuddered at the thought. She still believed they could salvage their relationship, that Jordan would snap out of whatever daze Ava had put him in. Yet a small part of her whispered that maybe Caroline was right. Then came a fateful meeting at a hotel conference suite in Los Angeles, one that Jordan had insisted Elizabeth attend. It was a gathering of major tech moguls, including Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, who were rumored to be there to discuss new tech innovations in global logistics. When Elizabeth arrived, she quickly realized something was off. She saw Jordan in the lounge area, standing far too close to Ava, exchanging hushed conversations. Seeing Elizabeth from a distance, Jordan slipped away discreetly, leaving Ava behind. Elizabeth approached her husband with a forced smile. "I'm here," she said, desperate to maintain composure. "What's the plan?" Jordan gave a curt nod. "There's a closed-door session for the key players only. You'll have to wait outside." In the past, Elizabeth had always been included in these key player sessions as Jordan's partner and PR advisor. The subtle exclusion burned her pride. She swallowed her anger. "Sure, I can wait." After hours of waiting, she found Jordan and Ava laughing together near the bar. As she approached, Jordan's phone buzzed, and he stepped away. That was when Ava turned a chilling smirk on her face. "You know Jordan's a visionary," Ava said, swirling the wine in her glass. "He needs someone who can keep up with him on all levels: business, ambition, excitement." Elizabeth felt her face flush with anger. "I've been by his side for years. We built this together." Ava gave a theatrical shrug. "Maybe in the past. But times change. People evolve. I guess you were too comfortable." Elizabeth clenched her fists, biting back a retort. She was determined not to make a scene in front of such influential people. But oh, how she wanted to lash out to expose Ava for the home-wrecker she was. Ava flicked her hair behind her shoulder, noticing Elizabeth's agitation. "Things will be better if you accept it," she cooed, as if offering advice to a friend. Jordan's moved on in more ways than one. The finances are just the beginning. Elizabeth's body went cold. She realized in that moment how truly precarious her situation was. Ava was not simply a fling. She was positioning herself as a partner in Jordan's professional and personal life. The credit cards were just one step in what looked like a systematic campaign to push Elizabeth out of everything she and Jordan had built. Still, Elizabeth refused to crumble. She left the event quietly, but her mind churned with rage and heartbreak. It was time for her to take action. She needed to protect herself, her assets, and her dignity. Little did she know that as she plotted her next move, Jordan and Ava were preparing a financial ambush that would push her to the brink. Only fate and an unexpected intervention by a certain CEO would alter the course of their twisted game. In the days after the Los Angeles conference, Elizabeth attempted to consult with attorneys. She picked up a referral from a friend who once worked with a high-profile divorce lawyer in New York. The initial phone calls were sobering, with Jordan's empire being primarily under his name and her credit cards cancelled. She had limited liquidity to hire top-tier representation. Even so, Elizabeth pressed forward. She managed to scrape together some funds from a personal savings account. Jordan had no access to money she had set aside from her early PR consulting days. It wasn't a large sum, but enough to secure a preliminary consultation. During that consultation, her lawyer, Michelle Liu, a bright and empathetic but hard-hitting attorney based in Houston, laid out the hard truth. Financial abuse and infidelity are serious grounds for divorce, Michelle said, scanning through Elizabeth's financial statements. But if Jordan's funneling money and assets into new accounts under his own name, or shifting resources to places you can't see, we need proof, and we need it fast. Elizabeth swallowed. She recounted Ava's involvement, how she was effectively orchestrating the restructuring. Michelle's pen scribbled quickly over a notepad. "You have a right to half of the marital assets, Elizabeth, but it looks like your husband is 2 steps ahead. We must move quickly." The plan was to gather evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing and file a court order to freeze marital assets, ensuring Elizabeth had a fair shot. But as they began drafting documents and rummaging through what records, Elizabeth had an avalanche of shocking details surfaced. Jordan wasn't merely cancelling credit cards. He was transferring stocks from their joint portfolio into an account under his newly formed trust. He had changed the authorized signatory details for a few of their properties, effectively locking Elizabeth out. He was also taking out lines of credit against certain properties, presumably to fund new ventures that, as Elizabeth suspected, involved Ava. The emotional strain weighed heavily on Elizabeth. She couldn't sleep, her appetite waned. Each day felt like standing at the center of a storm. Yet if she thought this was the worst of it, she was mistaken. One evening, after finalizing some documents with Michelle, Elizabeth returned to her mansion to find her keycard didn't work on the electronic locks. Pounding on the door, she shouted for the live-in staff if any were left. Seconds later, the door opened slightly, revealing Ava's face. "Jordan's not here," Ava said icily. "You should call next time." Elizabeth's heart hammered. "This is my home. Get out of my way," she demanded, trying to push past. But Ava slid in front of her, refusing to budge. "He told me you're not welcome here anymore until the legal mess is settled." Ava sneered. "I have every right to ask you to leave." Elizabeth was trembling with fury. "You have no rights here. You're the mistress, not the wife." With a cold laugh, Ava stepped aside and pointed at Elizabeth's luggage haphazardly placed in the foyer. "Jordan left these for you," she said. "He said to pack whatever else you need and let security escort you out if you refuse to leave." Elizabeth blinked away tears, her throat raw with outrage. She was being thrown out of her own home by the woman who had intruded into her marriage. That moment was a cruel epiphany. Jordan had not only cut off her finances, but now he was physically pushing her out of the place she had shared with him for years. Yet in all that darkness, a sliver of light emerged the next morning. Elizabeth received a phone call from a close mutual friend, Marcus O'Donnell, who worked with Jordan at a large tech conglomerate in Dallas. Marcus was someone Elizabeth trusted, an executive who had known Jordan since the early days. He had seen them build the company from the ground up. Elizabeth Marcus said, his tone urgent. "I don't know everything that's going on, but I heard from your staff that you've been locked out. There's a board meeting next week. Jordan wants to finalize some big decisions. If you can get to that meeting and talk to the chairman, maybe you can find some leverage." Elizabeth's breath caught in her chest. The chairman of this particular conglomerate was none other than famed CEO David Hartridge, known not just for his visionary leadership, but also for a strict code of ethics. Over the years, Hartridge had invested heavily in Jordan's business. He was the reason Jordan sat on that board. "He's not the type to meddle in personal affairs," Marcus warned. "But if Jordan's pulling stunts that compromise your share in the company, Hartridge might step in. He's big on fairness and hates scandal." It was the glimmer of hope Elizabeth needed. She thanked Marcus profusely. The plan was simple: attend the board meeting, confront Jordan in front of Hartridge, and present enough evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing to ensure the board and possibly the entire conglomerate would not stand for it. She spent the week gathering documents, bank statements, and text message screenshots that implicated Jordan in unscrupulous financial moves. Michelle Liu helped compile everything into a neat folder. "You need to be prepared for Jordan to lash out," Michelle warned. "He'll try to discredit you in front of the board." Elizabeth nodded her determination, overshadowing her fear. She practiced her speech, reciting it in the mirror of her modest hotel room, where she had temporarily moved. Heart pounding, she told herself that if there was ever a time to fight, it was now. Finally, the day of the board meeting arrived. Elizabeth dressed in a sleek black pantsuit that radiated confidence. She walked into the corporate skyscraper in downtown Dallas, her chin held high despite the knot in her stomach. She spotted Jordan in the corridor, flanked by Ava. and a couple of the board members. As soon as he saw Elizabeth, his expression darkened. "You're not supposed to be here," Jordan said, trying to keep his voice low. Elizabeth raised her chin. "I'm still an investor in your company. I hold shares. So yes, I'm attending the board meeting." Ava stepped in with a condescending smile. "Don't make a scene, Elizabeth. This meeting is for serious stakeholders." "I am a serious stakeholder," Elizabeth retorted, voice steady. "I'm your wife, still legally, and I'm half of this empire's foundation." Behind them, a tall figure approached CEO David Hartridge himself, a man in his 50s with graying temples and a firm handshake. He regarded Elizabeth with polite curiosity. "Ms. Alberts, I presume?" Elizabeth nodded, handing over her invitation papers and a letter from her attorney, which stated that she possessed partial shares. Hartridge studied the documents, then gave a curt nod indicating she was allowed to attend. Jordan shot Elizabeth a glare that spoke volumes. You have no idea what you're getting into. But Elizabeth did. She was here to preserve her dignity, her livelihood, and the legacy she had helped build. The meeting commenced in a sleek conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Dallas skyline. The board members sat around a large mahogany table exchanging pleasantries about the upcoming quarter's projections. Jordan made a short presentation on a new partnership with a logistics firm, highlighting expansions and new contracts. A few board members clapped. Then came time for open discussion. Elizabeth raised her hand, clearing her throat. "I'd like to address some concerns about the financial structuring Jordan is proposing." She began, her voice reverberating across the silent room. Jordan's face reddened. Ava, seated beside him, tried to intervene. "We should keep personal matters out of board discussions," she said. But Elizabeth pressed on, raising the folder of evidence. "These changes aren't just personal," Elizabeth said. "They could affect company stability. Jordan is funneling resources into a new trust making questionable decisions without transparency. I have documents signed by him with references to Ms. Ava Monroe demonstrating a conflict of interest that could potentially compromise investor trust." A hush fell over the room. Hartridge's brow creased. "Jordan, is this true?" Jordan stood, scrambling for composure. "This is a personal matter. Elizabeth is overstepping her bounds." "She's not." Hartridge replied, his voice sharp. "If there's a conflict of interest that threatens the stability of our partnership, it's very much a board matter." Jordan's eyes darted between Hartridge and Elizabeth. For the first time, he seemed cornered, uncertain how to proceed. Ava shot Elizabeth a lethal glare, realizing that Elizabeth's boldness had forced the topic into official territory. The tension was palpable. Elizabeth's heart thumped so loudly, she was certain everyone could hear it. But she stood her ground. Continuing. "I also discovered lines of credit being taken against marital properties to fund expansions. These expansions could be legitimate, but the details are obscured. I have reason to believe Ms. Monroe is manipulating these finances for her personal gain." Murmurs rippled through the board. A couple members exchanged uneasy glances. Even those who might have sided with Jordan seemed rattled by the magnitude of Elizabeth's accusations. Hartridge steepled his fingers, evaluating the situation. "I propose we recess for 15 minutes. Jordan, Elizabeth, Miss Monroe, please step into my office." Jordan inhaled frustration etched across his features, but he couldn't refuse the CEO's request, not without causing a catastrophic scene. The three followed Hartridge into a glass-walled corner office, shutting the door behind them. In that tense, enclosed space, the real battle began. Elizabeth laid out her evidence on the polished table before Hartridge. Jordan tried to dismiss it all as a personal dispute, but Hartridge was no fool. He could see the potential for scandal, especially if a partner was using company infrastructure for personal vendettas. Throughout this heated exchange, Ava attempted to deflect blame. She portrayed herself as a legal advisor, merely suggesting financial moves disclaiming any wrongdoing. But Elizabeth's carefully compiled documents suggested otherwise. Emails, text messages, and proposed legal documents bore Ava's digital fingerprints. Hartridge's expression darkened. "Jordan, this is unacceptable. If these documents are authentic, you've put your personal entanglements ahead of corporate responsibility. I won't allow it under my leadership." Jordan's face went pale. He tried to protest to label Elizabeth's claims as overblown, but Hartridge had already made up his mind. "Until this is sorted out, Jordan, I'm placing your proposals on hold. We can't move forward with any major financial changes if they're under this sort of ethical cloud." Elizabeth felt a surge of relief, a faint vindication. While she hadn't resolved the core issue of Jordan's betrayal, at least the board wasn't letting him run roughshod over her financial future. But Jordan, cornered and embarrassed, lashed out in desperation. "You can't shut me down like this," he snapped at Hartridge, voice tight with anger. "I'm the one who made that original deal with your conglomerate. You need my innovation." Hartridge stood up, bristling at Jordan's tone. "I'm the CEO, and you've just made me question your reliability and integrity. Watch yourself, Jordan." Ava stepped closer to Jordan, placing a hand on his arm to calm him, but he shrugged her off. "You'll regret this," he warned Hartridge, then turned to Elizabeth. "And you made a fool of me in front of everyone." Elizabeth clenched her fists, refusing to cower. "You did that to yourself," she said, voice trembling with both fear and resolve. Jordan stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Ava followed quickly, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Hartridge sighed, looking at Elizabeth, who was holding back tears. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," Hartridge said. "I'm sorry about your personal struggles, but I have to protect the board's interests. If you need anything, contact my office. I'm not a family court judge, but I won't let Jordan drag the company down." With that, Elizabeth let out a shaky breath. She had achieved a small but crucial victory, yet she couldn't shake the nagging sense that Jordan, humiliated and cornered, was far from finished. She left the skyscraper, stepping out into the bright Dallas sun, uncertain, but determined. Little did she know this chapter was only the start of a far more explosive confrontation, one that would involve security teams, sudden betrayals, and a twist that would bring Jordan himself to his knees. Life outside the mansion was lonely, but Elizabeth was thankful for the reprieve from Ava's manipulations. She rented a small apartment near downtown Austin and used what funds she had left to secure her basic needs, while Michelle continued to press for a financial freeze on Jordan's assets. In the weeks following the tense board meeting, Jordan went surprisingly quiet. No more legal letters arrived. No more credit lines were sabotaged. He didn't attempt to contact Elizabeth, nor did Ava. Instead, it seemed as though they had retreated into some silent fortress, likely strategizing their next move. Elizabeth took advantage of the lull. She reconnected with old friends and mentors, explaining partially at least what she was going through. While many were shocked, they offered support in the form of references, moral encouragement, and occasional leads for a stable job or a business partnership. Despite the heartbreak, Elizabeth discovered a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just a passive bystander in Jordan's world. She had her own capabilities, her own strengths. Slowly, she started consulting for small tech firms, using her communications and PR background to help them craft compelling pitches. It wasn't a fortune, but it was honest work that reminded her she could stand on her own 2 feet. Then one evening, she received a phone call from an unknown number. A crisp, professional voice greeted her. "Hello, Elizabeth. This is Patricia Carlson. I'm an executive assistant at Tesla, working under Elon Musk's leadership team." Elizabeth's heart thudded. She had met Patricia briefly at a tech conference in Berlin 2 years ago, but they'd never exchanged more than pleasantries. "How can I help you?" Elizabeth asked, mind racing. Patricia hesitated. "I might have information relevant to your predicament with Jordan. Let's just say some of our legal divisions have been observing Ava Monroe for a while, and some red flags have come up." Red flags. Elizabeth's curiosity flared. "You're investigating her?" A slow exhale from the other end. "Our major concern is that she's potentially engaged in insider trading, or at least something that veers close to it. She's been known to manipulate powerful men to gain inside info on deals, especially around new technologies. We don't have direct evidence, but we do know that she's heavily involved in your husband's finances. We suspect she might be siphoning resources for her own agendas." Elizabeth's mind reeled. This was bigger than a domestic spat. Ava might be leveraging Jordan's resources and connections to stake her own claims in the tech world. That explained the sudden shifts in finances, the new trust accounts, and the lines of credit. Patricia continued. "We want to bring her down, but we need more information. You, Elizabeth, might be in a unique position to gather that." Elizabeth tapped her fingers on the kitchen counter. "Isn't that something your legal team handles?" A rueful laugh. "Yes, but we need Jordan's direct involvement. We suspect he's unwittingly giving her access to confidential materials through corporate crossovers or joint ventures. If you can help us prove it, we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, protect Tesla's proprietary data, and help you gain leverage in your divorce." Elizabeth considered the offer. It was risky. If Ava was truly up to something illegal, Elizabeth could expose herself to potential backlash, but the lure of finally getting the upper hand was strong. "I'll do what I can," Elizabeth replied cautiously. "But how do I communicate with you about this?" Patricia gave her a secure email address and instructions on how to encrypt files. "And one more thing," Patricia said, before hanging up. "People like Ava are cunning. She'll anticipate your every move. Don't trust phone lines or any device that Jordan has access to. Be careful." Elizabeth thanked her and ended the call. Adrenaline coursing through her. For the next few days, she scoured her digital archives for anything that might hint at insider information. Jordan's old emails messages about collaborations with major tech companies like Tesla or Amazon, documents that Ava might have manipulated anything that showed a trail of questionable activity. She found a few suspicious threads, forwarded emails from Jordan's corporate account that were CC'd to Ava's personal address. Attachments relating to Tesla's Project Next Gen battery were among them, though none of this was strictly proof of wrongdoing yet. Elizabeth compiled what she could and sent them to the secure email Patricia provided. In response, Patricia confirmed that these were valuable leads, but incomplete. "Keep digging," she urged, "and let me know if you get direct evidence of deals or monetary gains tied to these inside details." Meanwhile, Michelle Elizabeth's lawyer was preparing for a preliminary hearing to freeze some of Jordan's assets. She insisted Elizabeth come to court to testify about the financial abuse and the suspicious activities they had uncovered. But Jordan's side surprised them by agreeing to a partial freeze without argument. "That's strange," Michelle said, tapping a pen against the conference table. "Why would he agree so easily?" Elizabeth shrugged, perplexed. "Maybe he realizes fighting me will look bad in front of the board." But Michelle wasn't convinced. "I suspect he's preparing a bigger move. Be vigilant. He may have more leverage than we know." The next morning, Elizabeth received an unsolicited text from Jordan. "We need to talk, face to face." She felt a swirl of conflicting emotions: anger, sorrow, curiosity. But she knew she had to tread carefully. She agreed to meet him in a public place, a cafe near the courthouse, where she could keep the upper hand. When Jordan arrived, he looked tired, as though the weight of his troubles had worn him down. He offered a half smile, which Elizabeth did not return. "Liz?" He began using the old nickname he once uttered, with affection. Things got out of hand. She crossed her arms. "You think—" He sighed, scanning her face for warmth that was no longer there. "I want to settle this amicably. We can discuss spousal support, property divisions, everything. No need for a long, nasty court battle." Elizabeth let the silence hover. She wasn't naive enough to believe him at face value. "Amicably? Are you telling me Ava is out of the picture?" Jordan's shoulders tensed. "This is about you and me, not her. Look, maybe I got carried away with Ava's advice. She's a brilliant attorney." "She's manipulative," Elizabeth cut in sharply. He brushed the point aside. "Regardless, I'm willing to compromise, but I need you to lay off this insider trading nonsense. It's reckless. You're endangering my reputation." Elizabeth realized then that Jordan knew she'd been snooping into his communications. Perhaps Tesla's legal inquiries had begun reverberating in his circle. She saw the fear in his eyes. He was worried, if not about losing her, then about losing his empire. "You made me the enemy," Elizabeth replied, in a hushed, trembling tone. "When you let your mistress cut off my cards and throw me out of my home." Jordan looked away, shame flickering on his face. "I didn't handle that well. But you have to understand the pressure I'm under with these deals." She waited, letting him squirm. Then he continued. "You'll get a fair share. I promise. I just need you to stop meddling in my professional affairs, especially with Tesla or any other major collaborators. You'll ruin me if you do." A bitter laugh escaped Elizabeth. She thought of all the times she had stood beside him, protecting him, representing him before powerful players, forging alliances that were crucial to his success. Now he was pleading for her, not to ruin him. The irony nearly choked her. Before she could respond, Jordan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and muttered a soft curse. "I have to go," he said, throwing some cash on the table for their untouched coffees. Elizabeth watched him leave, a mixture of pity and disdain swirling in her stomach. It was obvious he was desperate, but was this a genuine attempt at reconciliation, or a ploy to keep her from uncovering more incriminating information about Ava? That question lingered as she returned to her apartment, drained. However, a new email from Patricia waited in her inbox. It contained an attachment, a partial timeline of suspicious trades linked to accounts rumored to be controlled by Ava Monroe. There were large bets placed on Tesla's stock ahead of public announcements. Gains in the tens of millions. This is huge, Elizabeth thought. If she connected these trades to emails or calls between Jordan and Ava, it could be the smoking gun. And while Elizabeth had no intention of going to the feds on her own, Tesla's legal team could bury Ava. and by extension, Jordan's complicity, if he was involved. Elizabeth clutched her phone, anxiety coursing through her. She was walking a razor's edge. One false step, and Jordan might retaliate more fiercely, or Ava might strike. But a successful strike against Ava could free Elizabeth from this entire ordeal, giving her the leverage to secure a fair divorce settlement, or even land Jordan in deeper trouble, depending on his role. She reached for her phone to text Patricia when it buzzed in her hand. A call from an unknown number again. Tentatively, Elizabeth answered. A man's voice greeted her calm and steady. "Hello, Ms. Alberts. My name is Gregory Shaw. I'm part of CEO David Hartridge's legal counsel. He asked me to follow up regarding the situation with your husband." Elizabeth's heart skipped. Hartridge's legal counsel. "We understand from Mr. Hartridge's conversation with you that there might be unethical or even illegal behavior in play," Gregory continued. "The board is concerned about potential liability if Jordan's personal dealings spill into our corporate structure. We can't risk another scandal. Mr. Hartridge would like to assist you discreetly." Elizabeth exhaled slowly. She was on the cusp of powerful alliances forming against Jordan and Ava, but the more people got involved, the more dangerous it felt. Gregory concluded, "We'll be in touch with your lawyer. If you have any crucial evidence, Mr. Hartridge suggests you keep it secure. He wants to avoid a public meltdown, but he's prepared to do what's necessary to protect the company's interests, and that includes supporting you in your legal disputes, if it comes to that." Hanging up. Elizabeth felt a measure of validation. The cracks in Jordan's seemingly untouchable world were growing. Perhaps justice would prevail. Yet as she prepared to finalize the next round of documents for Michelle, a gnawing worry kept her awake at night. Cornered animals are the most dangerous, and Jordan, though once gentle and loving, had shown he could be ruthless when threatened. She braced herself for the storm that was surely coming. The next time Elizabeth saw Jordan in person, it wasn't by chance or a carefully arranged meeting. It was at the headquarters of Hartridge's conglomerate in Dallas. A sudden emergency board session had been called to address urgent corporate matters, and Elizabeth, having been notified by Gregory Shaw, arrived prepared. She walked into the reception area, her heart pounding with anticipation. Michelle Liu had insisted on accompanying her, but at the last minute she was called to handle a crucial filing. Elizabeth went alone, relying on the moral support from Gregory and the knowledge that Hartridge wanted the truth on record. Jordan was already inside the boardroom with Ava, who paced like a clad tiger. When Elizabeth entered, they both snapped their heads in her direction. Ava's glare could have sliced glass. Jordan's face was inscrutable, tense, angry, but also tinged with fear. Hartridge arrived moments later, trailed by a few board members and legal advisors. He wasted no time in stating the purpose of the meeting. "Allegations have come to my attention that Ms. Monroe has been engaging in stock trades leveraging proprietary information from Jordan's company and potentially from our own collaborations. We need to clarify the truth. Now." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Ava's jaw clenched. "This is preposterous," she began. "We demand to see your proof." Hartridge nodded to one of his advisors, who distributed printed documents, timelines of suspicious trades, tied to accounts flagged by Tesla's legal team, along with correspondences that Elizabeth and Patricia had pieced together. Jordan snatched a packet from the advisor. His eyes swept over the page's color, draining from his face. Ava's lips thinned, and for a moment Elizabeth could see the faintest flicker of panic in her eyes. Hartridge pinned them with a stern gaze. "Jordan, you've been a valuable partner. I don't want to see your personal life derail your professional standing, but this is bigger than your marriage. Insider trading is a federal crime, and if Ms. Monroe is using your business resources to pull this off, you're implicated." Ava recovered quickly. She placed a hand on Jordan's arm, her voice smooth. "This is a misunderstanding, David. Anyone can align stock trades with corporate announcements. It's called speculation." Elizabeth decided enough was enough. She stood. "Speculation is one thing, but forwarding private emails, entire business proposals, and preliminary press releases is not speculation. I've seen the messages. You're literally discussing the best times to execute trades based on announcements that hadn't been made public yet." Ava whirled on Elizabeth. "You have no legal standing to claim that. You're just a scorned wife trying to sabotage Jordan and me." Elizabeth's blood boiled. "We'll let the evidence speak. There are even time-stamped emails from Jordan's corporate account sent to your personal email, Ms. Monroe, discussing upcoming expansions and product launches. Then trades were executed in your name or trusts linked to you within hours." A hush followed. Jordan's hands shook slightly. He seemed torn between denial and guilt. After all, the evidence was damning. If he denied it outright, he'd appear foolish. But if he admitted his involvement, he risked criminal charges and the wrath of the board. Hartridge leaned forward, his voice firm. "Jordan, I need answers." "Were you aware of these trades?" Jordan stared at the table, words refusing to form. Finally, he managed, Ava said it was all above board, that it was just normal investing. Ava let out a short laugh, but it sounded hollow. "If you want to scapegoat me, Jordan, think carefully," she warned. "We made certain deals in your name as well. Your signatures are on plenty of documents." The entire boardroom seemed to hold its breath. Hartridge addressed one of his legal advisors. "Have we sent this to the SEC?" "Not yet," the advisor responded. "We wanted to confront them first." Jordan shot to his feet, panic etched on his face. "No need to escalate it. We can handle this internally. If I undo the trades, repay any gains, repay tens of millions of dollars," Hartridge asked. "And that would just be the tip of the iceberg if the SEC digs deeper. This is out of our hands if they launch a formal investigation." Elizabeth watched Jordan unravel. This was the man who had once been so composed, so unstoppable. Now he was cornered, sweat beading on his forehead. Ava, too, looked like a wild animal backed into a corner, eyes darting around the room. At that moment, a building security guard appeared at the door, knocking softly. "Mr. Hartridge, you asked for security on standby," he announced quietly. "Thank you," Hartridge replied, his tone like steel. "I believe we might need you." Ava's eyes flitted toward the door, then back to Hartridge. She adopted a pleading tone. "David, you know me. I've handled legal matters for some of the biggest players in the industry. I would never do anything to jeopardize your trust." Hartridge's face remained stony. "I trusted Jordan, not you. And this evidence suggests you're at the center of a major ethical breach. If you don't have a verifiable explanation for each of these trades and how you obtained insider information, I have no choice but to protect the company from liability." Suddenly, Jordan snapped. Fear twisted into anger, and he pointed a trembling finger at Elizabeth. "You did this. You ruined everything because you couldn't handle that I moved on." Elizabeth steadied her breathing, preparing to reply. But Hartridge cut in calm yet firm. "Don't blame her for your poor decisions. You let your personal affair become a corporate liability. Something in Jordan cracked. He lunged toward Elizabeth as if to grab her documents or her phone, an irrational move likely spurred by desperation. But he never made contact. In a blink, the security guard stepped forward and intercepted Jordan, gripping his arms. "Stand down, sir," the guard said, voice authoritative. Jordan struggled, but the guard was a solid wall of muscle. Ava shrieked. "Let him go." "This is a private matter." Hartridge shook his head, anger coloring his features. "You just attempted to assault someone in my boardroom. Security remove Mr. Alberts from the premises." Jordan's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't do that. I'm on the board." "Not anymore," Hartridge said grimly. "I can and I will. You're suspended pending an internal investigation. Once that concludes, we'll determine your status. Now go and take Ms. Monroe with you." A second guard stepped in, guiding Ava toward the door as she protested threatening lawsuits and defamation claims. But her words rang hollow, overshadowed by the looming specter of an SEC investigation. Elizabeth stood off to the side, stunned by how quickly it had escalated from a tension-filled meeting to an outright meltdown. As Jordan and Ava were led out, Jordan craned his neck to shout at her, "You'll pay for this, Elizabeth. Don't think you've won." But the threat carried little weight now. In that moment, Elizabeth felt the mixture of triumph and sorrow that comes with toppling a man she once loved. She hadn't wanted to see Jordan destroyed, only to protect herself and the life they had built together. But Jordan's actions and Ava's ambition had forced her hand. Hartridge dismissed the board members, soon after instructing his legal team to cooperate fully with any investigations. He turned to Elizabeth with a sympathetic frown. "I'm sorry you had to endure this, Ms. Alberts. I assure you we'll handle it lawfully. Whatever personal or marital disputes remain, I hope you find closure." Elizabeth gave him a small nod. "Thank you. I appreciate your fairness." She gathered her documents and left the skyscraper, the bright Texas sun striking her face as she stepped onto the street. The entire drama replayed in her mind. "He let his mistress cut off my cards, but the CEO called security on him." She thought a bitter yet satisfying sense of irony spreading in her chest. She wasn't naive enough to think it was over. Legal battles would continue, depositions would be taken, and the divorce was far from final. But in this pivotal moment, she had taken back her power, standing against the storm that Jordan and Ava had unleashed. And for the first time in months, Elizabeth felt a glimmer of hope that she might in the end be free from their tyranny. In the weeks that followed, word spread like wildfire. News outlets picked up on rumors of insider trading linked to a high-profile tech investor, hinting that a major name was under investigation. It didn't take long for the rumor mill to connect the dots to Jordan Alberts and his mysterious attorney-turned-partner, Ava Monroe. Elizabeth watched from the sidelines, inundated with calls and messages from acquaintances, reporters, and sometimes even old college classmates she hadn't spoken to in years. She ignored most of them, preferring to let the legal process unfold without adding fuel to the media frenzy. Jordan, under immense legal and financial pressure, attempted to strike a deal if Elizabeth agreed to keep quiet and not testify against him or Ava. Regarding insider trading, he would give her a generous divorce settlement. The settlement included alimony, a hefty lump sum, and properties that would secure her financial future. However, Elizabeth refused any agreement that required her to lie or withhold the truth if subpoenaed. Nonetheless, she allowed her lawyer Michelle to work out a fair settlement that didn't involve perjury. Eventually, Jordan capitulated, realizing he had to salvage what he could from the marriage and business meltdown. The final settlement granted Elizabeth a significant portion of the assets the mansion by Lake Travis, ironically, and a sizable share of Jordan's original tech startup. Meanwhile, Ava disappeared from the public eye, her reputation in tatters. Rumors surfaced that she'd fled the country perhaps to avoid legal repercussions, while others suggested she was hiding out in some luxury villa, waiting for the storm to pass. Either way, her days of meddling in Jordan's finances seemed to be over. Elizabeth didn't celebrate Jordan's downfall. She quietly grieved the end of a marriage that had started in love and partnership, yet she also felt relief and a renewed sense of self. She returned to the Lake Travis mansion, deciding whether to keep it or sell. The sweeping views of the water brought back memories, some of which felt like knives to her heart, others that warmed her soul. She began a new chapter in her life, leveraging her PR skills to start a consultancy focused on helping women entrepreneurs navigate both business and personal challenges. She named it Phoenix Rose Consulting, symbolizing rebirth and resilience. To her surprise, she found more joy in championing other women than she ever did, standing behind Jordan at glitzy galas. She kept in touch with Patricia from Tesla, who occasionally updated her on the ongoing investigations. Whether Jordan faced criminal charges depended on further evidence. But at least for Elizabeth, the immediate threat to her assets and well-being had lifted. David Hartridge reached out, once inviting Elizabeth to a dinner with the board, presumably to mend fences. Elizabeth politely declined. She had no desire to relive the tension of board meetings or navigate corporate politics, where her personal life became public fodder. She was grateful for Hartridge's stance, but preferred to build her future away from the chaos. In moments of solitude, Elizabeth reflected on the entire ordeal. She'd once believed that love, loyalty, and shared ambition could conquer anything. Yet she also realized that unchecked power and ego could corrode even the strongest of bonds. Jordan's betrayal had been a painful lesson, but it set her free to discover her own strengths and a life not tethered to someone else's rising star. Yes, heartbreak lingered, and healing was an ongoing process. But Elizabeth found herself waking each day with a sense of purpose. She'd gather with female founders at local co-working spaces, host workshops on media relations, and offer moral support to those feeling overshadowed by bigger players. Each time she saw a spark of confidence ignite in another woman's eyes, she felt her own sense of wholeness return. In time, Elizabeth would finalize the divorce, sign the deeds, and officially start over. A sense of calm settled within her, like the slow, tranquil waves on Lake Travis at dawn. Her story, the humiliating card cancellations, the public meltdown, the mistress's meddling, would become a cautionary tale, one she shared sparingly, only when it might help others. Despite the scars, Elizabeth refused to let bitterness define her. She chose growth empathy, and a belief that with the right support, anyone can rise from the ashes more formidable than before. Just as Elizabeth thought she had reached stable ground, fate tossed her another curveball. A month after the settlement, Michelle called her urgently. "The feds want to depose you," she said. "They uncovered new evidence Jordan may be involved in deeper crimes, bribery, money laundering. Ava might have orchestrated a network." Elizabeth's stomach dropped. Jordan never mentioned anything like that. "They've found offshore transactions and documents with his signature," Michelle said grimly. 2 days later, Elizabeth sat in a stark federal office, flanked by Michelle and 2 serious agents. They questioned her about Jordan's finances, Ava's role, the card cancellations, and philanthropic events that may have masked backdoor deals. Elizabeth stuck to the facts. She neither speculated nor dramatized. One agent, impressed, said, "You've been very helpful, Ms. Alberts. This case is significant." She left emotionally drained but relieved. She hadn't been dragged down with Jordan, but the storm wasn't over. Whispers followed Jordan was hiding at a secluded ranch, dodging the press. Ava had vanished. More subpoenas were issued. An indictment loomed. Elizabeth stayed focused on her consultancy, channeling stress into helping other women navigate business pitfalls. Her story, once painful, became a symbol of warning and strength. Then came the headlines: Jordan Alberts indicted for insider trading fraud and obstruction. Ava was named but still missing. The scandal rocked the tech world. Elizabeth issued a single statement. "I'm saddened by Jordan's choices. I've cooperated fully with authorities and continue to rebuild my life." Eventually, Jordan pled guilty to a lesser charge, offering a tearful courtroom apology. Elizabeth watched from home, tears in her eyes, not from triumph, but quiet grief for the man she once loved. Still, she understood consequences had to follow actions. That night, beneath the soft moonlight over Lake Travis, Elizabeth allowed herself one last cry for the past that died and the hope still waiting ahead. Life has a way of testing our fortitude when we least expect it. Elizabeth Alberts began this journey as a devoted wife, only to see her world upended by betrayal and financial sabotage. Yet what she lost in illusions, she gained in unbreakable resilience. Standing up to powerful forces and calling out wrongdoing isn't easy, but it's sometimes the only way to protect your dignity and your future. If you found this story gripping, insightful, or inspiring, we invite you to be a part of our community. Like this video, share it with friends who need a reminder that courage can emerge from chaos, and subscribe for more real-life drama and empowering tales. Let Elizabeth's story serve as a beacon, no matter how ruthless the betrayal. There's always a path to reclaim your power and build a brighter tomorrow. You too can rise like a phoenix.